If you're a manufacturer that wants to have a restorative impact on the environment, you can bet you'll encounter a few skeptics along the way. In this short video, part of our Champions of Responsible Business video series, we hear from Erin Meezan, Vice President of Sustainability at Interface. Erin shares how the company wins skeptics over, one mind at a time.
You know, one of the biggest challenges is you're never going to get everybody. There is a big part of sustainability that's fundamentally about values. And there's also sort of a respect that you have to have for meeting people where they are on the journey. So when we first started this different perspective, this sort of cultural change, this transformation at Interface, it started with one person. And he had a vision and he had an idea. And it was our founder, Ray Anderson. And I think one thing that Ray did really well is he started by telling this vision to people one-on-one. As many people as he could speak to, he went out, put himself out there, and had a conversation about what's important to him and shared that vision. So when we talk about sort of wanting to engage associates and wanting to introduce people to who we are, new people to the company, suppliers, customers, we always have that in mind, and we really think about starting from the place of it's a conversation. And what I really like about that is it allows you to meet people where they are, and it allows for a lot of flexibility and understanding about what it is that we're really talking about. So in the process of those conversations, you always encounter skeptics. You always encounter people who are resistant to the idea. And I think one way that we've dealt with that is we've really said consistently, this is what we're going to be about. I think a lot of skepticism in companies comes from the fact that they're constantly exposed to the next marketing campaign, the next thing we're going to talk about. It's very fleeting, particularly if you've been at companies for a really long time. So I think some of that skepticism just comes from, is this really real? So I think one thing that we've done really well is we've said to people, this isn't a marketing campaign. This is fundamentally about who we are, not about what we're selling. And I think by making that distinction that this is really about who we are versus about a sort of weekly, monthly campaign, that's a big part of it. I think the second part of it is that we've remained very true to that. Over the course of the last 15 years, we've seen financial challenges in sort of three big time frames that have really challenged the business. We've laid people off, we've closed down plants, but we've never gone back. We've never said we don't have the money for sustainability or we don't have time to do it. We've fundamentally said this is who we are. And what's really fascinating is one of our biggest skeptics is our current CEO. When he was the CFO, he's been at the company for about 30 years. When he was the CFO, Mr. Anderson developed this vision and started focusing the company in fundamentally a very different direction, a much more sustainable direction. And our CFO, Dan Hendricks, was really skeptical. He was skeptical that this would provide benefits back to the company. He was worried about how much it was going to cost. But what was very interesting is when we started focusing on waste and we saw that in addition to not being wasteful and being more respectful with the resources we were using, we were also saving money. He started to become convinced. He started to see the benefit. So I think a big part of it for us is really tying it back to these core values, being very consistent, and giving people the flexibility to come on one mind at a time. From time to time, companies will ask to come to Interface to sort of hear a little bit about our experience and to learn about how would you implement sustainability in your organization. So we had hosted a group of engineers mainly and operations people from a sort of fellow manufacturing company. And they were in one of our plants in a conference room and they were discussing sustainability. And we were talking about why it was important to us, the value system behind it, what we were really doing to implement it. And there were some skeptical people there. In particular, there was one very skeptical female engineer. So she'd been sort of difficult in the conversation, sort of not very much on board with this whole idea of really implementing it in a manufacturing environment. I mean, her comments had been very much, I see the value in doing this. It's not that I disagree with it, but I don't think you can do this with a group of people in a manufacturing plant. So they took a break, and she went to the restroom, and as she was coming back, she encountered one of our factory guys who's driving a fork truck, who was moving carpet from sort of the finished end into the warehouse. And so she just stopped him and asked him, what is all this sustainability stuff? You know, what is it that you guys are working on? And she was floored by the answer. You know, he explained to her, this is kind of about how I contribute, and really, for me, it's about saving the planet. She was completely floored. So she came back into that meeting a completely different person. And she sort of described the interaction to her colleagues. And at the end, she said, the best thing I can think of to summarize what I saw here at this factory is love. And they said it completely changed her perspective. She went into our factory one kind of person, had that interaction, and left with a completely different mindset.